The other day, I was scrolling through my comment section within one of my videos and came across an interesting point. A great villain doesn't always need dramatic or life-changing character development. They don't need a redemption arc, a shift in morality, or some massive emotional breakthrough. Sometimes, a villain can remain fundamentally the same person and still be incredibly compelling, simply by having subtle character development, strong writing, and a consistent worldview that shapes the world around them. And when I thought about it, it really resonated with my understanding of truly great villains within anime. First, I would like to give credit to Narius Dixon 933, who inspired me to make this video. Let's take Doflamingo from One Piece for example. Despite all the trauma he endured, being cast out of Marijo, killing his father, and suffering through poverty and violence, his worldview never actually changed. From childhood to adulthood, he held onto the same celestial dragon mindset, that he was born superior to everyone else, that the world owed him everything, and that he had a divine right to rule over lesser beings. Now normally, this kind of attitude would make One Piece fans hate him just as much as Saint Charlos. But that isn't what happened. In fact, fans love him. Why? Because Oda understood something crucial. Consistency isn't a flaw when it's executed with creativity, charisma, and with purpose. Here's what makes Doflamingo fascinating. Most villains with tragic backstories shift their perspective. Doflamingo didn't. His trauma didn't humble him. It intensified his arrogance. Instead of seeing the cruelty of the celestial dragons and rejecting it, he doubled down. He decided that the world owed him everything he lost. His suffering didn't create empathy. It created resentment, entitlement, and a burning desire to drag down the world that rejected him. This is why Doflamingo stands out. His internal logic is twisted but perfectly consistent. If the world is cruel, then he will be crueler. If the world is controlled by monsters, then he'll become the biggest monster of all. It's not a change, it's a solidification of what he always believed. Think about the Dressrosa Arc. When Doflamingo activates the birdcage and gives the entire country a countdown to annihilation, he's not doing it out of desperation or madness. He's making a calculated move that reflects his worldview. If he can't have his kingdom, no one can. When he sits on his throne, strings attached to his fingers, manipulating every citizen like literal puppets, it's the perfect visual metaphor for his character. He doesn't see people as individuals with agency. They're toys for him to control. What truly elevates Doflamingo is how Oda balances his villainy with his personality. He's flamboyant but ruthless, smiling but sadistic, charming but terrifying. A fallen noble who still moves like a king. His pink feather coat, his trademark glasses, that iconic laugh. These aren't just aesthetic choices. They reinforce that Doflamingo has an unshakable confidence in his superiority, that he can dress however he wants and still command absolute fear. His design is memorable, his presence is overwhelming, and his backstory adds depth without ever undermining his villainy. He represents absolute corruption, not because he became corrupt, but because he always believed he had every right to be. That's what makes him one of the most perfected villains in One Piece. He doesn't want redemption, he wants control. And that unwavering nature is exactly what makes him compelling within the One Piece fandom. Now let's look at another villain who often gets unfairly criticized, Frieza. Outside of the Shonen or Dragon Ball fandom, Frieza is often labeled as one-dimensional or undeveloped, but that just shows a complete misunderstanding of his role in the story. Frieza is from a race of ruthless aliens who are naturally gifted with power. He never had to train to achieve strength, and yet, instead of choosing to protect the weak, he chooses to conquer them and declare himself as the Emperor of the universe in order to achieve universal dominance. This isn't an idea that Frieza can just develop out of. He believes that this is his ultimate right, unwilling to even have the slightest compromise when it comes down to it. He is someone who is the very embodiment of evil, being purely sadistic and cruel. He can never be redeemed and sympathized due to his countless and inexcusable crimes within the story of Dragon Ball. But what separates him from greedy supreme rulers like Shogun Orochi, for example, is how he's always shown as being the exact opposite of Goku's heroic ideals and morality, serving as his ultimate foil. While Goku trained hard to achieve power throughout the OG Dragon Ball series and even leading up to Namek, Frieza was born with it, being naturally gifted with extraordinary power, the authority to rule over multiple different planets within his universe, never even knowing 1 ounce of struggle or defeat, as he never questioned whether he deserved what he has. That's what makes Frieza perfectly written as well. Because of his clash with Goku during the Namek saga, Goku represents earned strength and constant growth. Frieza represents inherited power and stagnation. Goku sees value in every opponent and every challenge, as he always shows kindness and sincerity towards his opponents. Frieza sees everyone beneath him as insects not worth his time. This is the unstoppable force meets the immovable object dynamic. That's what makes their rivalry so engaging. It's about two completely opposing worldviews colliding at full force. Frieza doesn't need to change, because his role in the story isn't to learn or grow, it's to embody everything Goku stands against. He's the final boss, the ultimate obstacle, the representation of natural privilege versus earned strength. And you know what? That's fine. Not every villain needs a redemption arc. Not every antagonist needs to question their beliefs. Sometimes a villain is most effective when they remain exactly what they are. Think about it this way. If Frieza had a moment of doubt during the Namek saga, if Goku's mercy made him question his worldview, and he had some kind of realization about the value of life, would that have made him a better villain? Absolutely not. It would have completely undermined the entire climax of the Namek saga, because Frieza is utterly unredeemable. When Goku shows him mercy and Frieza immediately betrays that mercy by attacking him from behind, it's not a plot twist. It's the most in-character thing that Frieza would do. He's incapable of change because his ego and pride won't allow it. And this is what makes Goku's decision to spare him so powerful. It's not because Goku thinks Frieza can change. It's because in showing mercy even to those who don't deserve it, even when it's pointless, even when it's dangerous. That's who Goku is as a character. The fact that Frieza doesn't change validates Goku's philosophy. Goku was strong enough to win without killing, and that's what mattered to him. Now here's where things get interesting. Even though I've spent the whole time arguing that Frieza doesn't need to change, he actually does show some form of growth, just not in the way people expect it. During the Tournament of Power, Frieza makes a pragmatic decision to work alongside Goku and the other Saiyans he despises, because he realizes survival is more important than pride. This isn't a redemption arc that suddenly makes him a good person. He's not questioning his evil nature, but he is adapting to his circumstances in a way that shows he's not completely mindless in his villainy. What makes this brilliant is that it's pragmatic evolution, not moral evolution. Frieza learns that sometimes you need to swallow your pride and cooperate with those you despise to achieve a greater goal. He's right back to plotting against Goku and the others. His fundamental nature hasn't changed. He's just learned a new tactic. And honestly, that fits his character perfectly. Frieza isn't stupid. He's a strategic emperor who's ruled a galactic empire for decades. He's learned when to adapt his methods while keeping his core beliefs intact. This is the kind of character evolution that doesn't always get credit. Not every character arc needs to be about becoming a better person. Sometimes growth is just about becoming more effective at being who you already are. Let me make a broader point here. The anime community's obsession with redemption arcs and tragic backstories has created this false narrative that static villains are inherently inferior. However, static villains serve as a crucial narrative function. They represent an unmovable obstacle that forces the protagonist to grow. They're the ultimate test. If every static villain could be convinced and redeemed, then the story loses a sense of stakes. Sometimes the hero needs to face an enemy that can't be reasoned with, can't be saved, and simply must be defeated. That's not lazy writing. That's understanding what a story needs. Doflamingo and Frieza are the perfect examples of this type of villain. Their unchanging nature forces both Luffy and Goku to push themselves beyond their limits and unlock transformations that they never would have reached otherwise. For Luffy, Doflamingo's cruelty and domination over Dressrosa pushed him into revealing Gear 4, his first major dramatic transformation that completely refined his fighting style and power. For Goku, Frieza's absolute refusal to change or back down ignited his Super Saiyan transformation, the legendary warrior of myth, because nothing less would be able to stop him. If villains like Doflamingo or Frieza had wavered, if they hesitated, doubted themselves, or shown even the smallest crack in their worldview, those transformations wouldn't have carried the same weight. Their unwavering evil is exactly what made Luffy's Gear 4 and Goku's Super Saiyan forms feel monumental to the audience.